something that's been coming up for me, and it may be because of all the loss I've had in my life, but it's just I want to encourage people to spend more time with their people in their relationships and remind themselves that, tomorrow is another day and you could very well be the last. And I know it seems so dark, but it's not. It's to not sweat the small stuff in relationships. And that was hard for me. It was like, as a very sensitive person, I could take things personally, but something that has come up for me in this last year is just to enjoy the people and to really be grateful for who they are and to always just find gratitude in as many situations as you can.
Welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, avid book reader, and developing salsa dancer. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who've gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast.
Welcome to episode 15 of the Amani Experience Podcast. This show, we have Jamie Horgan talking to us. She's a yoga instructor out here in Southern California. The favorite part of this episode for me is just Jamie's had a really, really tough year this year with a lot of loss in her life. And she's just really open and honest about how she got through that, how she was able to use yoga as a way to get through her depression and continue to try to thrive and get through the tough times. That's one of the many favorite parts of this show for me. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you very much for listening. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and give us a good rating. And now let's get to the show. Thank you. Welcome back to the show. I have our guest with us today. I'm going to read you her bio and then we'll get to talking to her. So our guest today was born and raised in Manhattan Beach, California. Both of her parents grew up in the South Bay as well, so that makes her a second-generation California native. Her love for yoga came in the fall of 2001 when she attended her first yoga class by the suggestion of her doctor. She had experienced severe anxiety growing up, but did not want to take medication. After attending just one yoga class, she could feel the profound effect it had on her nervous system. So to date, she no longer experiences anxiety. Our guest today travels internationally, leading workshops, teacher trainings, and retreats. Because of her own personal experience using yoga for healing, she's interested in spreading the beautiful gift of yoga to as many people as possible in hopes of helping another. Our guest today strongly believes that life is about love and service, and I'm so excited to welcome Jamie Horgan to our show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I feel honored.
You are. So Jamie's a yoga teacher. She's much more, so I'm excited to talk to you on our show. Well, first, we do a geographic check-in. So I already said we're here in Manhattan Beach talking, born and raised. Have you ever lived anywhere else besides Manhattan Beach?
No.
There's nothing wrong with that either, because
why would I?
This is a beautiful place.
I could travel.
You could. So on our show, we love to talk to people who have first experienced corporate life, and then they said, you know what, this might not be for me. I need to take the leap into the creative world. And so I know you have an interesting story. You used to kind of started in retail when you were young. Mm-hmm. So kind of share with us that story and then how that got you to yoga.
Yeah, there was a clothing store in downtown Manhattan Beach that hired me at 15. So I started working there, and then I eventually became the manager. And so I did that all throughout high school and then into my early 20s. And then I realized that's not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And so I went back to school for marketing and advertising and got a paid internship at a corporate shoe company, Ed Hardy Shoes. Worked there for a couple of years, and at the same time I had already gone through my teaching certification for yoga, and I decided to start teaching. And I was teaching from about 2006 until now. And I realized working in the corporate environment, I couldn't wait to get off work to teach. I was just exhausted on so many different levels, and I just was not interested in doing that for the rest of my life. And so I decided to drop out of school and take yoga full on and just kind of trust that that was my path. I did also have a waitressing job for a few years. I'd rather do that than work in the corporate environment. So it says a lot about that. But I remember when I was young, my dad used to always say to me, life is about fate and magic, and to watch the signs, and allow that to dictate your choices. And so even though when I actually went through my certification program, I was only doing it to learn more about yoga. I was interested in knowing why it was helping me so much. I didn't really think I was going to become a teacher. When I started teaching and feeling the effects of that, I couldn't help but notice that this was something that I need to investigate more as a life path. And so I just kept on following the signs, and everything was very serendipitous. The reason why I even started teaching was because my brother was dating the person who owned the yoga studio in Manhattan Beach.
Yeah.
And so she was like, you need to take this training. And I didn't have any money to do it at the time. And she did it basically pro bono. Like she did it for trade. And so my life, I indebted it to her because she changed my life.
Right.
And so I've been teaching ever since.
Okay. Do you want to mention who she is, or?
Julie Rader.
That's your mentor, right?
She's my mentor, Julie Rader. She's amazing.
Nice.
I don't know that there's any other word that can describe her, but she is amazing, and she's touched many people. And she helped me to see my own power and to help others.
Good. What was it about the first class you took that helped relieve your anxiety?
So I started at 18 doing yoga, and it was very inconsistent. I started actually at the college that I was going to, and it was a junior college here. It's called El Camino.
Yes.
And so it was just a PE credit. And then we just did maybe 5 or 6 poses, but it was the breathing that she taught us, the professor that she taught us, that was really what made the effect of the practice. It wasn't necessarily the poses that we were doing. It was just the breathing in the poses and being present. And that was my first experience in meditation, in a moving meditation.
Right.
So I think that is what helped me to feel that way. And so then when a few years later, my brother was dating this woman, and he said I should take some classes, I was like, oh, absolutely, I would love to. And that was just a completely different experience, being at a yoga studio versus like in an auditorium in college. But either way, the feeling was the same. It wasn't really about anything that we were doing. It was just the state of being that I think I maybe turned away from a lot when I was younger.
Okay.
So I'm also a recovered drug addict.
Right.
Did that for a long time. I got sober when I was 22, at the same time that I went through my teacher training. So that is what I think also helped to keep me sober, really, was the practice of yoga.
Right. How does yoga and how has yoga helped you stay sober?
It helps me to be present with the feelings that I'm in, rather than trying to turn away from them or medicate. It allows me to be who I am without having to turn away from that, to be in all the feelings that I have, and to accept life on life's terms, as it says in AA.
Right.
I'm not in AA anymore, but because yoga has been a great medicine for me. But so it's for me, it was mainly just learning to accept myself in life situations without having to medicate from that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I met Jamie, let me think. I met you like 7.5, 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a while ago. And what happened is that I would DJ a Friday night in Santa Monica, and then I get up for your 8 o'clock class. I think we were over at the Yoga Loft at Pier and PCH. It's like an 8.
Oh, Life Yoga Center.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Oh, man. They're still there.
Yes, they're still there. So that was like, it was like 8 o'clock in the morning class. So I'd get home at like 2:30, but I would get up because it was worth it to spend time with you. And I remember I was having issues with my back, and I play soccer, and so my back would always tighten up. So you helped me eventually keep coming back, loosening it up, and then you taught me this one stretch that helps me still to this day with my hamstrings. Is I'd lie on my back with my feet up against the wall, and that helps me out so much.
That's amazing that you still use that, because that is something that I prescribe to all of my clients still to this day.
Yes.
It's called Viparita Karani. Sanskrit, it means reversing pose. But if I could tell people to do one thing every day that's yoga related, it would be that and breathing. Obviously breathing, but.
Yeah. So thank you, because
You're
you helped me
welcome.
stay on the soccer field, be well, compete with the younger kids.
Aw.
And so like my hamstring issues are not as bad. Like I used to have a bad back then, but now it's much better. It's stronger. It's looser. So just props, just thank you. I really appreciate
you're
it.
welcome.
So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Of
It's
course.
amazing.
So I think about that all the time, and I do it. So let's see here. When you think about, because I consider yourself and myself, we're creative professionals. What's important in today's environment for creative people to succeed in today's business environment?
I guess, yeah. I mean, in anything, you have to believe in yourself. I've been reading a book by Brene Brown. It's called Braving the Wilderness, and she kind of reinforces that you need to just stand in your truth and believe that what you're doing is going to help people, no matter what it is that you're doing, or it's going to be something that's going to help you to grow as a person. And that's not always easy to actually take into your life. Just believe in yourself. That's easy. Some people are good at it.
Right.
I'm not so much. So it's also knowing that there will always be roadblocks, even if the path is meant for you. So going back to what my dad said, it's fate and magic. Sounds easy, it's just going to happen, fate and magic. But that's not really what he was saying. He was just saying, let life reveal to you what your path is, because the opportunities are going to keep showing up, and it's your choice to take the opportunity or not. And so just believing that that is the path. And if it's not, there will be a detour. There'll be something that takes you along another path.
Right. What do you do, and what do you advise people when they're trying to get through the roadblocks so they can still pay attention to the signs and not get disenchanted?
Yeah. That can be hard because, unless you're I'm not inside anyone. I can't fix them. Usually with my clients that are going through stuff, I have some clients that work in corporate America. They own companies, and they get very fixated on, the growth of the company, or, the digression of it, or whatever it is that they're going through. And so I guide them through a lot of guided meditations to get them present, to be in their body, to get out of the confines of the head and the mind. So if I could tell people one thing that would really help them is to sit and meditate. And there's a lot of great apps these days that you can they guide you through the meditations. They teach you how to breathe. I think it's fantastic.
Right. Any come to mind that you'd recommend that you like?
Oh, gosh. It's not... no, my head is blinking right now.
When you think of it, just shout it out,
Okay.
or text me. We'll add it to the show notes.
Well, the thing is I would say just, go to the App Store, put meditation in. Any of them will be great.
Right.
I'm a believer that all meditations are good meditations, so you really can't go wrong with that. And most of them have amazing people on them too. They have speakers like Brene Brown on there, and they have other ones like Oprah, and Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
They have their own meditation app. So I suggest stuff like that.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, when you were going to school, but you were also going to do your training at the same time, when did you realize, this is what I want to do, I'm ready to jump all in, and this is what I want my life to be about? When did you realize that?
When I started teaching, so like I had said, the woman my brother was dating, Julie Rader, she had me do a trade with her because I was like, I can't afford this. I'm in school right now. And she said, don't worry about it. What you can do is after you graduate, I've got some trips I have to go on. I need you to watch my dog. I need you to teach my classes. I mean, that was such an honor that she trusted me as a new teacher to teach her classes. So right away, I jumped into the fire, and I was teaching some of her very advanced classes and her advanced students. And the more and more I started teaching and realizing how much you can help people through teaching yoga, that was when I realized I'm like, I I don't know if I can really help people in marketing and advertising. I don't know. Like it's a creative outlet for me. Like I think, slogans and those kind of different things with regards to companies is really interesting to me, but I think I fell more and more in love with the service part of it. And yes, it is a living. I make a living from it, but there's so much more,
Right.
I'm probably not making as much as I would have made in that advertising industry, and that's okay with me.
Good.
Yeah.
Cool. Why do you love being a yoga teacher?
There's many reasons, but mainly it's just because of for instance, like you just telling me that 7.5 years ago, I showed you one pose and it helped your hamstrings and it's helped your soccer practice. And you remember that to me, just makes my heart feel so good. That means a lot, just to be able to help someone, even in, maybe what may seem like a small way. That's what life is about, helping one another.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Agreed. Cool. What is something that scares you?
Oh man, you would be surprised. A lot scares me.
Share a few with us.
I believe that the root of all fear is death. I think everything that we fear is related to that. I know that seems very deep, but really, the practice of yoga in its philosophy is all based around that. Like Shavasana, for instance, means corpse pose. And it's actually where we practice letting go of the fact that we are going to die. I know it's crazy, but when I finally came to that realization after reading through a lot of these texts and stuff on yoga and the history of yoga, it's about us just letting go of these afflictions, these things that cause us pain and suffering all the time. And I think Buddhists talk about that too, but for me, I think because I love this life so much that my relationships are so important to me and my family and my friends. So that's the stuff I kind of cling to. And yeah, I'm afraid of heights.
Okay.
But if you think about it, I'm afraid of heights because I'm afraid of falling. I'm afraid of dying. If you look, at it, if you keep uncovering it, it always goes right back to that. What we fear is not being alive. I don't know. Which can also, I think, who is it that says that? Maybe the Dalai Lama, or he says, and usually our fears keep us from actually living.
Very true.
Our fear of dying keeps us from living. So I don't have to think about it too much, but
You seem like you're doing pretty well. Continue to live. So, what advice would you have for people whose fear is actually stopping them from living, and they're kind of living scared, living in fear?
Honestly, the thing that helps me is experiencing other cultures that have less than we do here. That was really eye-opening for me. It was when I started to travel to third world countries and seeing that, yes, they have famine, they have disease, they have very, very much less than what we have here. It's almost that they're living more, though, than we are. When I was visiting Peru, some of these people didn't even have doors or plumbing. And they live on this concept called Ayni, AYNI, and it's about service. It's about giving to one another without expectation of receiving anything, which is, something I think we could all really incorporate into our life. But one of the examples they gave was that if, for instance, their next door neighbor comes over and they fix, something at their house, maybe, if they have plumbing, some of them do.
Right.
Then that family who's receiving the gift will then gather the whole community at their house, have that family over and make dinner for everyone. And they all come together and they celebrate. And they're just so happy, genuinely happy, smiling. And I'm sure there's families that aren't, but from the time I spent there, it was just a couple of weeks, but it was really enlightening. So long-winded answer is just to experience, I think, something outside of our bubble that we have here. And all the more.
Right.
Because I feel like that's the stuff, the oversaturation of technology and things and, all that is what causes the idea that we don't have enough or not enough. It's like we just constantly need more. I feel like the less we have, the more we have. I mean like property, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Less things that we need to be attached to.
Yeah.
So living more simply. And that's hard for people.
It is.
You know? I grew up in Manhattan Beach. It's a very prominent community. Fortunately, I didn't grow up in a super wealthy family. I mean, we were middle class, but my parents made us earn
Good.
our everything.
Yeah.
And that's why I started working when I was young. I started working actually when I was 14 for a little ice cream shop in downtown Manhattan Beach. It's not there anymore.
Oh, okay.
And I'd make smoothies and stuff, and yeah, they paid me under the table. I'm not going to say who owned it.
We'll
but
keep that on the DL.
Yeah. But back then, I don't think there were like child labor laws.
Funny. By the way, you can be as long-winded as you want. Your
Okay.
stories are great, so don't you worry about that at
Thanks.
all. What else have you learned from traveling internationally? Because I know you've taught classes and you've done a lot of teaching and traveling. So what else have you learned that's been very valuable for you in your international travels?
I think it's quality of the time that you spend with people, because a lot of these the traveling that I do are retreats that I'm leading, and I'm spending time bonding with my students that take my group classes here. And I always feel more present. I think it's easy, even as a yoga teacher, and I have a busy schedule. I've got a lot of clients, and that's all wonderful. I feel very blessed. But even in all that, sometimes I can become detached, or I can become like really in my head. And so when I go on these retreats, the biggest thing I get from it is just I feel very present. And I also take care of myself more. It's almost like, well, I think too, we have a, high incidence of like GMOs, and the food that we have here is just not, I mean, I always try and buy the best quality food, but you go to places like Thailand, for instance, and even Peru, they use all of the agriculture around them to grow the food that they're eating. When I was in Peru, like, they had every form of quinoa you could think of, and they made soup, they made salad, they made bread, everything was, and there's nothing that they add to it. So it's always a reminder coming back to keep whatever it is that I'm consuming. It's not just food, but what we consume from society, the news, to kind of put a lot of that stuff at bay and really make better choices as to what we are bringing into ourselves. It's not just food, it's a lot of other stuff.
True.
Because when I go to other countries, it's always seeing these other cultures that really spend a lot of time with one another in presence. There's not as many distractions. I mean, I could not use my phone in Thailand. There was nowhere that had Wi-Fi, and it was great.
Great.
Don't get me wrong, I wanted to be on Wi-Fi, but
Yeah.
it was a good test of being here now.
Okay. What other cities are you looking forward to visiting, or countries that you haven't been to yet? Kind of your bucket list.
I really want to go to Australia.
Me too.
Yeah, New Zealand. I'd love to go to Africa. I'm
Okay.
going to go to Morocco, Egypt. I'd love to go back to Thailand again. Thailand has been, I love their food too. The food is so clean there. Here it is too. You can find places like that, but there yeah, I think Australia, New Zealand, Africa. Yeah.
That's a good list.
Yeah.
All right, let's see how we can make that happen.
Yeah, right? I know, manifest.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here in LA, I never really had been exposed as much to yoga until I moved here to LA a little over 10 years ago. So there was a lot of yoga instructors. How do you kind of rise above all the noise and kind of distinguish yourself as a very exemplary and an awesome yoga teacher?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it is very competitive in LA. LA would be considered, even though it came from India, LA is definitely prominent, and it's considered the Mecca of yoga. I never wanted to be famous. That's not really my prerogative. I want to help people. And as long as I make a living and I can support myself and feel comfortable, I'm okay. So if the fame comes for some reason, okay, that's fine, but it's never been my goal. Also, when I started teaching almost 12 years ago, it was different, especially in the South Bay here in Manhattan Beach. There weren't as many yoga studios. They're just popping up left and right. So yeah, it's a little bit high competition. And I'm not going to say that I'm immune to that, because it's my livelihood. But at some point I have to not let myself get pulled into that, because that is just going to bring me back down that path of not being enough, not feeling worthy, and remember why I started teaching yoga, and that's what I remind myself every time I go in to teach. It's about them. It's not about me. It's about them. It's for them. So as long as I keep reminding myself that is my priority, then all that other stuff doesn't really matter.
Good. I remind myself of a similar thing when I'm DJing events. It's not about what I want to hear. It's about what the people want to hear and make sure they have fun. So I can relate.
Yeah.
Now, how has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Failures are always opportunities to grow, aren't they? I actually had a recent one. I've never been fired as a yoga teacher. I've been replaced in a different time slot, but I've never actually been fired or let go. And recently, just about 6 months ago, I'm not going to say where I got fired from. I didn't do anything wrong. I've been teaching it for 3 years. Had great numbers, loyal students, and I was told that I wasn't a part of their community, and that there was another person that was, and they thought that she'd be a better fit. And I know her, and I think she's adorable. And so I said to them, I adore her, and I wish her well, and this is not the place where I need to be teaching. That was how I handled it initially, and then it became very hard for several weeks after, because I started to question my teaching. I started to question, well, why did they really do that? What was the reasoning behind it? I think just as the humankind, we're always trying to find a reason for something. But then I had that moment of clarity where I was like what my dad had said, that maybe wasn't the place for me, and I have other studios that I teach at that really value my teaching, and I have to just stay with that and not think that I'm going to succeed at every place that I teach at, and for whatever reason, they needed to give her that position. So I finally let it go,
It's hard.
It's hard because, it's an ego thing. And that I think it was I've been teaching for so long. I feel like I've really helped these people in this community. But, sometimes there's just no rhyme or reason for it. And I'm sure I haven't seen the actual reasoning behind it. It hasn't
come to fruition.
Yeah, it hasn't come into my view yet. But I have a feeling that at some point, that situation is going to make even more sense for me. And that's kind of another thing I remind myself. I'm everything is not always as it seems.
True.
And what we see right now is not necessarily what we're going to see in 10 years, or even 5 years, or 2 years, or 2 weeks. Things change so much. So as far as failure goes, I let myself feel it. I let myself feel it, but I don't let myself sit in it anymore. That was what caused a lot of the addiction stuff, a lot of the stuff where I was numbing, and it's just not productive,
right?
And there's so much more to experience, and so that's all I can really think of right now. I'm sure there's been other instances.
Yeah, but that's a good example. How did you let it go? Because letting go can be tough. I'm one. My friends always tease me, say I'm one to hold a grudge for a while. So how did you let it go?
Yeah, and it's funny because, and now that I remember, that same day, I had 2 different people ask me to do private lessons with them, and I'm still working with them privately. And so the universe, very serendipitously, brought into my life something that replaced that. Because I think at first it was this is a source of income, there was all different kinds of things going on in my head.
Yes.
And so the more yoga I practice, the more I am aware of if it's not coming from one place, it's coming from another place. So I started to look at, okay, well, I don't have this finance coming in now, but I have this. And maybe I'm going to be more of a private teacher versus a public teacher. Who knows? Can I just let this be the path? As far as letting it go, I think there's still some resentment, I still feel, because I indebted myself, but there's nothing vindictive about it. It's just like, I can either let myself feel this and be in pain and suffer, but, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. So I'm like, I choose just not to suffer.
Great saying.
My life is great. I make enough money for me to live and to eat and to do things that I enjoy, and that's enough for me. So as far as letting go, it's just looking at what I have to be grateful for, because it's really easy to be like, oh, I don't have this happened, that, this, but then there's this whole other list of stuff that I have in my life, my relationships, my, the people that do value me as a teacher, and, and I'm like, okay, I need to hold on to that.
Right.
And that helps me to let go of the stuff that, feels painful.
They say when you let something go, the universe will open up something else for you. It's just, you got to pay attention so you can see what's happening.
It's true.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yes, you do. You exhibit it too.
Thanks.
Now, how do you handle your critics? Because I'm sure there are plenty of critics out there. What do you do? How do you handle your critics?
I think
The haters.
Yeah, right. There's an etiquette in yoga. The people that hate on teachers or they don't like them, they usually don't say anything about it. I've never been like, at least not to my face, told like you suck. There has been some stuff that I've said in class that has affected some people. I wouldn't say on a negative level, but where it was maybe uncomfortable, because I do a lot of stuff that requires introspection, because that's how the practice has helped me. But what Julie used to always tell me is like, just teach from your authentic self, and the right people will show up, and the people who are going to be there and need to be there will be, and not everyone's going to like you.
Yeah.
So, which is hard, everyone wants to be liked.
It's human nature.
Yeah, it's human nature. But I think fortunately in yoga, people kind of at least put on the act that, they're like, they just will go to your class. That's the stuff I think that's hardest for the yoga teachers, to see a student who's coming to class regularly and then just stop going, or see them go to another teacher.
Right.
That can be hard, because it's like a heart thing. It's like, oh, well, I'm giving my heart and soul, but after, over a decade of teaching, I'm just like, I can't take this stuff personally. Sometimes people's schedules change. They just literally can't take your class anymore.
Right.
Or maybe another teacher resonates with them more. And one thing that I know for certain is that there is enough for everyone.
Yeah.
There is no lack. There's a surplus, and
An abundance.
And we can all share. We can share yoga teachers. We can share the money, the supply, whatever, the food. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great attitude. Talk to us about the darkest time in your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
I guess the darkest time in my life, it's hard to say. So my mom died when I was 14. And so that was really dark. I was also young, and then I started medicating pretty quickly, with lots of different things, alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, whatever it was I was consuming. But there's something that comes to mind for me is, I think that my brother and my dad both died last year, within 6 months of each other. And so that was really, really devastating for me, because it's the rest of my family.
Yeah.
I have other family, but that's my immediate family. I don't have a mom, I don't have a dad, I don't have a brother. I do have 3 half siblings though.
Okay.
And I'm close to one of them. And so he's awesome. But I went into early this year around springtime, after, I guess, the cloud kind of, I was in dust, because it was like I was taking care of everything, of my dad's estate. And once I finally was not distracted by all the stuff I was doing, I fell into a really deep depression around April, and it went through till July, maybe even late August. And so I've never felt depression like that before, but I also had never gone through something that severe in sobriety either, because when it was my mom, I was able to numb. So I didn't know what it was like to feel all that stuff. And so I just let myself feel it. it was hard. A lot of days were hard. But thankfully, there are many types of yoga that can help that kind of stuff. And so I did meditations every day, gentle yoga. I was just gentle with myself.
Good.
It's hard, though, when you're in that because you think you're not going to ever get out of it. And then one day I was just fine. And not fine, but I was not feeling like...
You're a little better.
Yeah. I was feeling like despair before. And each day it kind of got better and better and better.
Yeah. As someone who lost my father very suddenly, I still have my brother here, but I can relate a little bit because that's tough. Whether or not you're walking down the street, you see a car that reminds you. You see something on the radio, music. And my dad introduced me to music. So every day I'm always reminded. So I can relate a little bit, not to the level that you can, but I understand. So props to you for getting through it.
Thanks.
You're here today looking good. So,
Thanks.
and you can kind of see online, you can kind of see what you're going through. And so it's hard. Like I've learned that you can't really just got to be there for people either from a distance or up close. And eventually, there'll come a time when you can kind of help them out with whatever you can do.
I agree. Yeah, that's beautifully put. Just let people live. And yeah, I believe in serendipity. I believe that people come together at the right time.
Yeah, so we get stronger. Mm-hmm. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways because I want you to share whatever else comes to mind. But who was the most influential person for you growing up?
My mom.
Okay, tell us.
Yeah, she just embodied integrity, just a strong feminine woman who was be kind but take no shit, And I just always remember just idolizing her because she just got everything done. She had all of these great relationships and friendships. She was constantly involved in our lives, me and my brother, and encouraged us to be unique and to focus on the stuff that we enjoyed. I felt very little force from her from her own, I guess, her own background, but kind of letting us be free spirits. And a lot of this obviously is looking back on it, and I see it differently now than I did then. But she was just a woman of integrity and very, very bold, but also very gentle and giving and generous. One of the best things that she could have ever taught us was that every Christmas she would take her bonus that she'd get from work, and we would adopt a family, an impoverished family, usually in downtown LA. And I remember specifically this one year, she adopted a family of 10 total, including the parents. They lived in a 1-bedroom, and they had never had Christmas before. Not one of the kids had Christmas, and the oldest child was 14. And so we surprised them on Christmas Eve with a Christmas tree, and they each got presents. And she let my brother and I pick out the presents for, he would pick them out for the boys, and I picked them out for the girls. And it was not just that one time. We always had dinner at the dinner table, and all of our leftovers, we would wrap them up, and we would take them down to the Manhattan Beach post office.
Yep.
There used to be a woman that lived in there, and that was back when Manhattan Beach let the homeless people kind of roam around. But she lived there, and we would bring her dinner almost every night for a very long time. And then one day she just wasn't there. And I look back on it now and I realize that she probably passed, but I think my mom was just oh, she probably moved on, So that was really impactful as a young person, especially living in such very
affluent area that we live in.
Yeah. So yeah, she definitely was that for me.
What do you think she would say to you now, as she's seen you grow as a woman, and you're you're strong and you're doing your own thing, and you really have gotten through some times of adversity? She obviously she's going to be really proud of you. What do you think she would say to you? What comes to mind?
I think she'd say, keep doing what you're doing.
Right. Exactly.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Woo! Getting heavy up in here. I love it. I love it. Thanks for being so honest and transparent.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if we go back to 21-year-old Jamie, you were here, Manhattan Beach, kind of in the thick of it, and you could go back and give her some advice, what kind of advice would you give 21-year-old Jamie?
Well, 21 was the roughest year of my life. I don't think there was a single day that I was not inebriated in that year. I would just tell her that you don't have to feel this way anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to feel this way anymore. You are enough as you are, and you can do more than this. And, I think that's something that I still kind of tell myself, because I think with everyone there is that little person inside that needs that reassurance, that love. No matter how adult we are or like how old we are, there's always going to be a part of us that needs that reminder. But yeah, I would definitely just tell her that, like, you don't have to feel this way anymore.
Okay, cool. So here's one of my favorite Oprah questions I got from Oprah.
Nice.
What is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
Or I'm still learning, right?
Yes, exactly.
To not take things personally.
Oh, tell us more. That's a good one.
Yeah. I've always been self-aware. And that may be a reason why I also medicated, but introspective. And so maybe it's codependent, I don't know. But a lot of times in situations where, something happens or I've said something and it hurts someone's feelings or it's, a person that kind of disconnects from me, it's hard for me to not take a look at myself and wonder, what did I do wrong? And so that's been something I've been having to work on a lot, is just to try to be more accepting of that. Just people change, things change, and not everything is personal. It's not always about me.
As much as we want it to be.
It's always about me, and that life just sometimes people, they don't work out,
right?
And that's a very small example, but I think people encounter that kind of stuff daily, with interactions, and especially as a yoga teacher, I can be very sensitive to that. I try to be as sensitive to my students as possible. But you just never know what kind of day someone's had when they walk into the studio. So you're guiding them, and you could say something that triggers them. And that is, that's something that can be hard for me personally if it's taken the wrong way, being misunderstood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? And I can give you mine. My sentence would be, I help people unlock their creativity through the art of teaching them how to DJ.
Nice. I love that.
Thank you.
I'm going to steal my dad's because it's
Please.
It's been impactful in my life. And he used to always say that the purpose of life is to discover your gifts, learn to use them, and share them with others.
Well done.
Yeah. And so I think and he also used to say that no one is better than anyone else. Everyone has their own special, unique ability. And so to never think that you're better than someone else, but to see each other as equals and to value what any person has to offer. One person may be amazing at DJing and another person might be really good at giving hugs, like Amma, for instance. She's like known for that, but she touches the world. It seems simple, but he said it has nothing to do with your education. It has nothing to do with your knowledge. And so to just give whatever it is that you have as much as you can.
Okay. Besides being a yoga instructor and a yoga teacher, what other gifts do you have to offer people? I feel you have so many more. What other gifts come to mind that you have to offer?
I feel like I can be very empathic. And so I like to be able to be there for people when they're in times of need. And so to just hold space for people to be where they are without trying to fix, which can be hard, sometimes, especially if you really care about the person.
Right.
I don't know if any other gifts I have. I'm not very coordinated. I know it seems surprising because of yoga, but...
I mean, you do flips and you can do all these stands and all these crazy poses, but you're not coordinated?
Anything you practice, you can do. But
True.
You put me in like a for instance, I tried capoeira once. That was not good.
That was a no for that?
No, there was no elegance or grace happening. But it was fun. I enjoyed myself. Yeah, other than that, I can't really think of anything that comes to mind.
Okay. Good. What's one new habit that you've added to your daily routine in the past year, 2 or 3, that has been very beneficial?
I've been taking probiotics and enzymes and other vitamins. And it's had a tremendous effect on my digestion, my sleep, my overall energy. And I think because it's allowing my body to really assimilate the nutrients from the food I'm eating. And I'm really proactive now about buying only organic stuff, drinking as much water as I can. I don't think I did a lot of that in my 20s. My 20s, I was just kind of... I also didn't have the knowledge that I have now about nutrition, but yeah, so probiotics are amazing. Probiotics and enzymes.
Okay. Any specific brand of probiotics or anything you'd recommend?
Yeah, doTERRA.
Okay.
It's DOTERRA. And I take their Terrazyme, which is the enzymes, and then their PB Assist, which is the probiotic.
Okay, good. Now, we're really big readers on the show. You've mentioned a few books already. So if there was 1, 2, or 3 books that you feel people should stop what they're doing right now and read them right away, what books would you recommend? And as you think and answer, I'm going to do a quick little Instagram story for us as well.
Oh, cool.
So go ahead.
Tuesdays with Maury.
Oh, great book.
That was one I read when I was like 16, and it just... Oh, so good. The Alchemist.
Yes, Paulo Coelho.
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
And The Four Agreements.
Oh, by Rui, what's it?
Ruiz, Don De La Ruiz, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, okay. Tell us why the Four Agreements.
Four Agreements are, I think it kind of goes back to the being misunderstood, He just reminds you about these truths, just to not take things personally, to always have integrity. And they all of these books, I think, kind of have that same value system of integrity. Just
right.
Being true to who you are, doing what's right, and that your life will unfold as it's supposed to.
Good. Okay. Anything else pop to mind? You mentioned the Brene Brown book, which is a great one.
Yeah, I love Brene Brown. She's amazing. But yeah, the Braving the Wilderness, I'm not all the way through it, but it's been exceptional so far. Another one that I read, Journey of Souls, for people that are into afterlife stuff.
Okay, tell us more.
I forget the author, but he is a psychiatrist. He's a doctor of psychology, and he does hypnosis. And before he started doing this hypnosis, he was not really a believer in the afterlife, but he accidentally put someone into such a deep state of hypnosis that they started telling him about past life. And then he has 29 cases in this book, and he basically outlines what the afterlife looks like. And it talks about the levels of souls. And that's kind of a generalized thing on it. So it tells these accounts of people and their experiences in the afterlife.
Good. All right, we'll add all those books to the show notes. Thank you for sharing. Now tell us, before we're almost done, but we have a couple other questions. But before we get to those questions, how can people find you online?
I have my website, which is jamielovesyoga.com, and I'm on Instagram, Jamie Horgan, Horgan, so it's like Morgan with an H.
Yes.
I'm also on Facebook.
Good.
Yeah.
And where do you kind of play around the most online? Where you live the most?
I'm mostly on my email, but Instagram probably. Facebook, I think, is like now MySpace.
Yes.
Instagram's the new.
There you go, the new Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to share with us before I ask you our final question?
No, not really.
Okay. And then I always love to end with each interview with just any additional words of wisdom or advice for the listeners out there. Because you've been an awesome guest. You've been very transparent. I love hearing your stories. I can tell your spirit is coming through the microphone. And you've had a tough year, but you've survived, and you're going to thrive more. 2018 will be a great year for you, so just keep going. I admire you from afar, and my commitment is I need to pick up my yoga practice again for next year. So I want to do that because I got to stretch out more. It's just, it's a hot mess. And one day, eventually, I want to be able to do a headstand. So soon.
Oh, yeah, we could get you to do a headstand.
So that's my goal. I'm putting it out there in the
Yeah.
universe. So yeah. So any wisdom, advice?
For you or just in
Just
general?
for me.
I could tell you how to get into a headstand.
We can talk about that offline.
something that's been coming up for me, and it may be because of all the loss I've had in my life, but it's just I want to encourage people to spend more time with their people in their relationships and remind themselves that, tomorrow is another day, and you could very well be the last. And I know it seems so dark, but it's not. It's to not sweat the small stuff in relationships. And that was hard for me. It was like, as a very sensitive person, I could take things personally, but something that has come up for me in this last year is just to enjoy the people and to really be grateful for who they are, and to always just find gratitude in as many situations as you can.
Awesome. Thank you very much for being a guest. Love having you. We're going to see you soon.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on, and share this podcast with anyone who you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon on our next episode.